Hello, loves. Merry Christmas Eve. It's so cool to be able to have time to do a diary for today. I really wanted to speak about the gene key today that we are transiting through, which is gene key 10. We have been transiting through this gene key from December 19th all the way up until Christmas, December 25th. And it is a beautiful Sagittarius into Capricorn energy. It's much more heavily Capricorn is for anyone that's familiar with astrology, as you well know. Only really the first day or so of this gene key falls into Sagittarius energy. Um, so it is about the shadow of self-obsession, the gift of naturalness, and the siddhi of being. And wow, it's been really fun to be in this key and to experience this key. I love getting to connect with people who have this gene key or this gate even activated in their profile because it really plugs nicely into my 2034 channel that I have that goes from the sacral center up to the throat. And the 10 just makes this really beautiful connection there, you know, with 34 or the 20 to the G center. And when you're in the energy of someone who really has a beautifully aligned 10th energy, you feel accepted and loved and just genuinely joyful to be alive. It always feels like a self-love energy in my personal opinion. And that's that's me feeling it and not having it. Equally, when you feel this energy in someone who is not in alignment or is in a shadow state, there is that shadow of self-obsession. And then I also feel judgment and a lack of self-acceptance. So it's like it's weird how this self-obsession leads into inability to accept oneself as someone is. So with that being said, let's get into our contemplation. I have my books here in front of me, so I'm just like feeling into which one I want to go to first. I think I'll go to the Gene Key Bible, written by Richard Rudd. I'm going to read some of the most prominent points of the 10th Gene Key to you. I hope you enjoy this contemplation, and I'll be adding some color to it as I read where I feel necessary. So, being at ease, that is the 10th Gene Key. Programming partners, the 15th Gene Key. So that is interesting to think about. The 15th gene key's shadow is dullness. So dullness and self-obsession, really, really interesting how that plays together. As I've mentioned before, I really encourage you contemplate programming partners when you're contemplating a gene key because it really helps unlock so many more layers to a gene key, more than you might have anticipated or been able to access without bringing in the union of the programming partner. That is why they're partners. They unlock things for each other. I was trying so hard to keep that yawn away. Goodness, excuse me. It's a rainy Christmas Eve here today, and I was up a little early, so um, I guess I have a yawn. Reading from the shadow of self-obsession. Through the lens of the 10th shadow, all you see when you look at others is people you would like to change. Thus, you find it extremely difficult to accept anyone else for their uniqueness. In psychology and psychiatry, such self-obsession is known as narcissism, and in moderation, it is considered to be an essential component of a healthy psyche. However, at the shadow frequency, such narcissism, like the legend it is derived from, keeps human beings endlessly trapped by their own reflection. Ironically, the more of an expert you become in the subject of the lower self, the further away you travel from the higher self. Self-obsession of the 10th shadow is driven by fear, and it is a very specific unconscious fear. It is the fear of losing your identity. I'm debating on reading the next nugget. It's really good. Okay, this might be a little bit of a longer adventure, but I hope it resonates. Mm, 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 mm. As one of the deepest of all human fears, this fear forces you into a pattern of trying to find out who you are in order that you might find some kind of permanent definition in life. This quest for your true identity is the greatest quest there is. It is the ageless journey of self-knowledge epitomized in the famous axiom cut into the stone above the door of the oracle in Delphi. Know thyself. However, at the lower frequency of the shadow level, this quest for self-knowledge becomes an obsession that actually keeps you from defining who and what you are. In your thirst to escape your fear, you create a journey that has no end, filled with drama and adventure perhaps, but ultimately one in which you have to face yourself. This is the craft of the shadow of the 10th. It tricks you into chasing the shadow of your own reflection, and your very journey towards your nature becomes your own net. Fascinating. Okay, I was just making sure I'm recording. It looked weird there for a second. Okay, so the repressive nature of self-obsession is self-denying. This kind of reversal of the energy of self-obsession becomes entirely centrifugal and focuses on everything and anything but oneself. These are people whose lives are lived for others and through others. However, such martyrdom does not have a positive spin and cannot serve evolution. Oh, excuse me. Oh. These lives are made up entirely of compromise, in which those who deny themselves become like zombies for the collective. Although this kind of language may sound shocking, a huge majority of the world population lives like this, with no real self-love and no true center or heart within themselves. These people are the prime targets for the great world religions. Their self-denial does not allow them to recognize the divine within themselves, finding it far easier to project such an authority outside of them. Interesting, the timing of the year that we are moving through this, isn't it? So the reactive nature is narcissistic. When the self-obsessive force is externalized through the reactive nature, it becomes truly narcissistic in the sense that it excludes all others. Just as the repressive nature denies its own existence, the reactive denies the existence of others. These are people whose lives are based entirely around themselves. The fear within them lives as anger. They project their fear of losing their identity onto others and onto society in general. Such people cannot yield any part of themselves to others. They live in paranoia that the world or others will somehow rob them of their right to freedom. The reactive nature finds relationships the hardest of all, since they are essentially locked in a love affair with themselves, but not with their true self. The true self is everywhere and in everything, since its nature is love. However, to realize such a concept, one has to drop the very thing that gives one the illusion of safety, the illusion of individual identity. Moving to the 10th gift of naturalness. Naturalness. The human journey, of course, is unique and is obviously different from that of other animals. We have to solve the conundrum of having a mind that can look at itself. The primal question, who am I, has to be answered before the gift of naturalness can once again be realized. There are so many paradoxes in this 10th gift, the main one being that you cannot be who you are as long as you think you are someone, but you still have to set off and search for this someone in order to realize that they do not exist. There is much tension inherent in this simple little question, who am I? And it is the realizing, I'm sorry, it is the releasing of the tension around your identity. That is the essence of the 10th gift. Excuse me. Excuse me. The main one being that you cannot be who you are as long as you think you are someone, but you still have to set off and search for this someone in order to realize that they do not exist. There is so much tension inherent in this simple little question, who am I? And it's the releasing of this tension around your identity that is the essence of the 10th gift. The 10th gift of naturalness can draw only when I'm sorry. The 10th gift of naturalness can dawn only when self-obsession exhausts itself. Did y'all hear that? In the back. I'm actually highlighting that for myself because I had missed that for some reason. Highlighting that. I had highlighted the whole section. The 10th gift of naturalness can dawn only when self obsession exhausts itself. The first great revelation that comes from the journey into your own unique nature is that you cannot be defined by any kind of label. Once you understand that you are neither your name nor your actions, feelings, thoughts, or beliefs, you realize that human nature is something far greater and wider than you ever suspected. At the gift level of frequency, there is a huge releasing of energy through your being and out into your life as all attempts at defining who you are begin to subside. The usual manifestation of this energy is an intense creativity coupled with a new sense of playfulness. You lose your sense of identity and simultaneously begin to feel centered in a wider context. The gift of naturalness cannot be practiced, copied, or systemized. It can only emerge through a rising sense of inner freedom and spaciousness. This sense of increasing ease and relaxedness in your life tends to follow an age old archetype sequence that appears to be universal. As we have seen, this process, which Jung called individualization, begins with the question, who am I? This question, which may also appear in different guises, such as why am I here or why am I doing this, kickstarts a process of inner questioning and the purpose and meaning of your life. The second phase of becoming natural tends to be a deep inner questioning and questing in which you isolate yourself in some sense from your previous responsibilities and give time and space to understanding your own nature more. For most people, this phase lasts a long time. Yes. And it also is the phase during which most people become stuck in the lower frequency of self obsession, falling in love with the endless quest for self knowledge. Yes. At a certain point, however, this phase gives way to a natural collapse and a subsequent letting go of all searching as you realize the futility of trying to find something that is clearly unfindable. This realization marks a huge transition point in your life, representing the release of your self-obsession. It can also be a very challenging time as you let go of all the constructs and techniques with which you may have identified and from which you derive security. Fortunately, this third phase swiftly becomes consolidated and integrated into your being, and you enter a new dimension in which you become more and more deeply relaxed. Okay. The fourth phase is something like a rebirth as you externalize what is truly inside of you for the first time in your life. It, did I skip the third? The third phase swiftly becomes consolidated and integrated into your being, and you enter a new dimension in which you become more and more relaxed. Okay. The fourth phase is something like rebirth. As you externalize what is truly inside you for the first time, it is time for deep joyousness and purpose. And it is only as you find this sense of relaxedness that you begin once again to feel truly natural. The fifth and final phase of the process of becoming yourself manifests as the flowering of your individualized, differentiated self. This is when you hit the peak of your own mythology and bring something entirely new into the world based on the high principle that has always lain latent within you. This final flowering of your inner being manifests as a challenge to the current norm, since your true nature is always found at the cutting edge of evolution. The idea, whatever it may be, represents the true beauty within the individual finding expression in the world. I'm kind of laughing, thinking how funny it is that we needed someone to write down these 5 phases of how to become ourselves. I'm thinking of people that I used to know well for many years that had the 10 um, gate in particular. And the amount of times they would ask me, why am I here? What's my purpose? Who am I? What role am I here to play? It was honestly, it was clearly that self-obsession is extremely repelling. I found it to be, um, especially with one individual in particular. I'm thinking of it plugged into the 34, so it came from the sacral. It was a really powerful channel. Any channel that comes off the sacral as a big influential energy in my personal opinion, because it's linked to just pure generating energy. And I found it so exhausting being around this person when they would go into that loop. It almost felt like they were missing the entire purpose of why we're here. And of course, that's what they were asking, why are we here? But the question in itself, the fact that you're asking it, is letting me know now that I understand this, that they were on the way to understanding. Eventually, hopefully, if they don't get stuck in those questions of the self obsession shadow, then the three will give way. The third phase will give way, and they'll have a huge transition point where they recognize they're asking a question that's unanswerable. It's an unanswerable question. Find a better question. Stop asking the question. Yeah, that that shadow's personal for me. It very much so would trigger me. Um, and I think I found it quite frustrating that I couldn't get through to them. But I think there's something here with the 10. I could be getting this wrong, maybe a deafness or a blindness to it. Uh, it's only through your own seeking and self contemplation that you come to realize all of it is leading back to you. I also hope I'm not sounding like I've arrived anywhere, or attained anything. I do just feel like I no longer ask that question because I recognize it's futile. So I'm very sensitive when I see it in others, and I recognize how much suffering can be around that question itself. Anyway, the siddhi, the 10th siddhi, being, just being. It's called divine laziness. When the differentiated self has manifested its highest expression in the world through the 10th gift, one final surprise lies in store. There is a sixth phase to the process of becoming yourself that brings an end to the whole notion of self knowledge. In a sense, it is a return to the stage before you ask the fatal question, who am I? This sixth phase is the 10th siddhi of being. When the 10th siddhi dawns in a human being, then for that person, even evolution itself has ended. In the 10th siddhi, the differentiated self spontaneously dissolves in a higher mirror of the third phase, in which the constructs of your search for self knowledge end. However, at this siddhic level, everything dissolves: self, not self, mind, form, purpose, and meaning. The only word that even gives a hint of what the 10th siddhi holds is the word being. In the expressions of the mystical traditions, there is sometimes known as the I am consciousness, although the very use of the word I can be misleading. In this 10th siddhi, there is no sense of I. There is only pure consciousness expressed as being. The 10th siddhi is destined to be deeply misunderstood by all who do not live in its embrace. Along with the programming partner, the 15th siddhi of fluorescence, it inspires one of the great metaphysical paradoxes of all time. This paradox is well expressed through a phenomenon particular to Buddhism, that of arhats and bodhisattvas, the two externalized manifestations of the higher state of enlightenment or self-realization. Without getting weighted down in hefty Buddhist dogma, these two expressions of human perfection can be understood in representing being and becoming, respectively. The Arhat is of the 10th siddhi, representing pure being, a state in which evolution no longer exists or matters. For the Arhat, once a person is enlightened, the whole universe is also enlightened, so there is nothing more to be done. For the Bodhisattva, who is the 15th siddhi, there is no end to life, which is continually evolving state of flowering. Thus, the Bodhisattva takes a vow to deliberately hold back their enlightenment in favor of helping evolution complete itself in the form of guiding others towards the state of liberation. So, where can you reflect on this 10 in your life? And where can you offer in the being? When are you most in your being state? I think of sleep. When I'm asleep, and the mind is turned off, just being. Sometimes I arrive there when I'm with dear, dear friends that understand me, and I just laugh, and we're just caught in our own laughter, our waves of play. I can truly feel I'm just being. Although I understand that that is joy. I have the dialogue of where am I? Where am I going? Who am I? Non-existent in those moments. I feel like I'm being when I'm riding a horse. Yeah, when I'm just riding him, when I'm not trying to make him run a pattern or do something, when I'm just with him. Maybe what would be more accurate now that I'm contemplating this out loud is when he's grazing and I'm just next to him sitting on the grass or holding his lead rope and watching him graze. That that feels even more true because when I'm riding, there is a goal, there's an objective. It requires presence, it requires skill, focus. But yeah, when he's grazing and I'm just there with him, I feel like everything is perfect. I don't have a single thought of me as needing to do anything except for exactly what I'm doing with him in that moment. It's so majestic. It's so powerful. The birds are going crazy outside. It's kind of beautiful. I hope the 10 inspires you. If you have the 10, I hope that you are able to exude this beingness, this naturalness for us all. I love you, and I might see you tomorrow. We'll see. It's Christmas. I would love to be able to capture the final day of the 10 by doing a Phoenix Diary on that day, on that the final day of the transit, and on this special day of Christmas. I love you. Merry Christmas Eve. Happy Gene Key 10. I'll see you soon.